evening, you're watching Just the News. I'm Amita Balachandra. We're going to start off today's bulletin with the Birbhum violence case. There are a lot of updates that's coming. In the first arrest in a case that's claimed at least 9 lives just last month, the CBI has arrested 4 suspects from Mumbai, according to the Indian Express. Now, a team of 6 officers probing the crime flew down to Mumbai and arrested these 4 suspects early this morning. Through transit remand, they will be produced before the Rampurhat court, where the CBI will seek their custody. Now, the murder of a deputy pradhan in Boktoi village in West Bengal's Birbhum district had earlier sparked off a chain of events, post which at least 8 houses in the area were attacked and set on fire, resulting in at least 9 deaths, including women and children. Meanwhile, the CBI today has submitted its initial report on an investigation into this violence to the Calcutta High Court. Now, further, the High Court reserved its order on whether the central agency should also probe the murder of the deputy Gram Pradhan, which allegedly triggered this retaliatory violence. Now, the High Court on the 25th of March had directed the CBI to take over the probe from a special investigation team that had been formed by the state government. The court then initiated a suo motu case a day after the violence in Boktoi village. Now, the court had called it an undisputed, shocking incident that has shaken the conscience of society. Moving away from the story to what's happening ahead of the Himachal Pradesh Assembly polls that is set to take place in November this year. Ahead of that polls attacking the BJP, Delhi Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia has claimed that BJP wants to make Union Minister Anurag Thakur its chief ministerial face. Now, he said, and I quote, "Reliable inside sources tell us that the BJP is so threatened by Kejriwalji's popularity in Himachal that they have now decided to change the face of the government that has been in power in the state for the last 4.5 years. To hide the failure of 4.5 years, the BJP wants to remove Jairam Thakur and appoint Anurag Thakur as the chief ministerial candidate," end quote. Now, on Wednesday, Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal began his mission Himachal with a roadshow in Mandi. Now, legislative assembly elections will be held in Himachal Pradesh in November 2022. Meanwhile, the Indian Meteorological Department has predicted severe heat wave conditions till the 12th of April. Now, the present heat wave spell, which commenced on the 26th of March, has been affecting Jammu, Rajasthan, Delhi, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Gujarat, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand and Bihar. Now, the heat wave has penetrated into most areas: Maharashtra, northern Karnataka, eastern Telangana and interior Odisha as well. Now, the IMD declares a heat wave when the maximum temperature over a location rises above 4.5 degrees Celsius above normal, and a severe heat wave is declared when the temperature departures over 6 degrees Celsius from normal. Meanwhile, in Andhra Pradesh, according to a report by PTI, all 24 ministers of the current Andhra Pradesh cabinet have submitted their resignations ahead of a major cabinet reshuffle, and this reshuffle is set to take place on the 11th of April, where the new cabinet is likely to take oath. Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Jagan Reddy had called on the governor at Rajya Bhavan for this as well. In an update now on what's going on in Maharashtra with the Anil Deshmukh case, the Enforcement Directorate told the Bombay High Court that former Maharashtra Home Minister is the mastermind, I'm quoting the ED, mastermind and brain behind the money laundering conspiracy and misused his official position to create unaccounted assets. Now, the ED has said that he also exercised, and I quote, undue influence over transfers and postings of police officials and on performance of those police officials, end quote. Now, in response to Mr. Deshmukh's bail plea, ED has said that the investigation is at a nascent stage at this point in time, and Mr. Deshmukh may tamper with evidence and witnesses. Now, this case is going to be heard tomorrow. Also, the Supreme Court said that immediate attention is required to be given to the safety of the 126-year-old Mullaperiyar Dam. Now, the supervisory committee will be strengthened to take steps that are required to be taken by the National Dam Safety Authority under the Dam Safety Act 2021. Now, the Supreme Court, which asked both Kerala and Tamil Nadu not to go into the history and concentrate on the future of the dam, said that the supervisory committee will issue directions that will be complied with by both the states. Now, that big order is going to be passed tomorrow. An update now on what's happening in the Parliament. The budget session of Parliament concluded today, a day ahead of schedule, with both the Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha witnessing spirited debates and fewer disruptions today. Now, the budget session had begun on the 31st of January. The Rajya Sabha has passed 11 bills, including 6 appropriation bills and finance bills that were returned. Soon after the budget session concluded, Prime Minister Narendra Modi met a few opposition leaders as well. Now, the Rajya Sabha on Wednesday passed the Criminal Procedure Identification Bill 2022. Now, this bill was passed in the Lok Sabha on Monday, which is the 4th of April. Now, the bill seeks to authorize the collection, storage and analysis of biometric samples of convicts and others involved in criminal matters. Now, Home Minister Amit Shah has said the data collected would be protected and shared through a secure mechanism so that people's privacy was not risked. Now, on the contrary, several opposition parties have slammed the bill as unconstitutional and even draconian. Now, Union Minister of State for Home, Nityanand Rai, has informed the Rajya Sabha that as many as 87 civilians and 99 security personnel have been killed in Jammu and Kashmir since the abrogation of Article 370 on the 5th of August 2019, as compared to 177 civilians and 406 security personnel in the previous 5 years. Now, Chief Justice of India N.V. Ramana today expressed his displeasure over Supreme Court being burdened with the onus of deciding politically sensitive issues. He said, and I quote, "If I agree all your matters to be taken up and orders that are sought to have passed, what purpose are political representatives elected for? The Lok Sabha, the Rajya Sabha," end quote. Now, the CGI posed a query to Advocate Ashwini Upadhyay, who had approached the top court with a prayer to direct the government to identify, detain and deport all illegal immigrants within a year. Moving on to international news, starting off with Sri Lanka's economic crisis. Now, Sri Lankan shares closed nearly 4% lower today. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka said that it would hold its monetary policy review meeting on Friday, with the review decision to be announced later on the same day after the market closes. Now, remember, Sri Lanka is facing its worst ever economic crisis. There's fuel shortage, essential food item shortage. There are people queuing up at gas stations. There are protests taking place asking for the Prime Minister and the President's resignation as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the central bank has said that Sri Lanka's reserves dropped 16.1% to $1.93 billion in March from a month earlier. Now, not just people taking to the streets demanding the government's resignation. We know that many cabinet ministers have already resigned, but the Prime Minister and the President haven't. Doctors and medical students are also now protesting over shortage of drugs in Sri Lanka, which is because of the economic crisis. Doctors have been demanding that a health emergency be declared in the country. Sri Lanka is also facing a shortage of fuel, like I mentioned, food items and essentials, among others. Meanwhile, India on Wednesday said that it has delivered 2 fuel consignments to Sri Lanka. The total fuel supplies to Sri Lanka is 270,000 tons. Now, Sri Lanka has been facing short supply of fuel, which is also resulting in hour-long power cuts every single day. Meanwhile, MEA spokesperson Arindam Bakshi today has said that India has extended assistance of about $2.5 billion during the past 2 to 3 months, including credit facilities for fuel and food. Now, after the latest consignment that went into Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka's cricketer Sanjay Surya has also thanked Big Brother, he said, India, for helping Sri Lanka. Moving on to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it's day 43. Ukrainian Foreign Minister has urged NATO to provide more weapons to the country amid the ongoing Russian invasion. Now, Ukraine's request comes in amid reports of Russia regrouping its troops in eastern regions of Ukraine. Now, soon after this, according to the BBC, NATO's General Secretary has said that NATO members have agreed to strengthen support to Ukraine. Meanwhile, according to Reuters, the mayor of Mariupol has said that over 1 lakh people still need urgent evacuation from the city. Now, Ukrainian officials have warned the residents of last chance to flee Russian attacks in eastern Luhansk region as well. Now, in a statement, the G7 ministers have said massacres carried out in Bucha and other parts of Ukraine were severe violations of international law. Interestingly, Russian embassy in India has also today expressed grief over the attack in Ukraine's Bucha. Around 300 bodies were found in mass graves in Bucha. Russia has, however, refuted the allegations of killing civilians. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden's top economic advisor has said that the administration has warned India against aligning itself with Russia and that US officials have been disappointed with some of New Delhi's reactions to the Ukraine invasion. Now, the director of the White House National Economic Council said, and I quote, "There are certainly areas where we have been disappointed by both India and China's decisions in the context of the invasion," end quote. Meanwhile, according to PTI, a Republican senator welcomed India's condemnation of the killings of Ukrainian people in Bucha by the Russian army, terming it as the country's hardening of stance. Now, India's representative to the UNT S. Tirumurthy and even External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar had condemned the killings in Bucha. Now, it is dubbed as India's toughest stand against Russia so far. In other news now, China has warned that it would take strong measures if US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan. This comes amid reports that she would likely visit Taiwan next week. Now, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson has said that the visit would severely impact China-US relations. Meanwhile, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said that transgender women should not compete in female sports. In comments that he said that he knew that these comments would be probably seen as controversial. Now, the issue of transgender athletes has come into spotlight after transgender cyclist Emily Bridges was recently ruled ineligible to compete in her first elite women's race by Cycling World governing body. Now, according to the BBC, Mr. Johnson said, and I quote, "I don't think that biological males should be competing in female sporting events. And maybe that's a controversial thing, but it just seems to me to be sensible," end quote. And one piece of good news before we wrap things up here on this bulletin. This comes in from Uttar Pradesh. According to the New Indian Express, a 20-year-old mentally challenged woman from Assam who had reached Noida in 2019 has been reunited with her family, all thanks to the Uttar Pradesh police. Now, the woman arrived in Noida on October 19, 2019, after which her case reached the local authorities, who then got her admitted to a government-run shelter home after due procedures. That brings us to the end of this bulletin. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.